So with that being said, let's get started. It's 2:02. I'm sure people will trickle in, but I figured we can start introducing ourselves so that once people are in the room, they can watch the replay to know exactly who we are, but they'll also learn about our experiences and who we are through the conversation. So let's go ahead and get started. This is the Top Women Startup CEOs panel. Pew, 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 pew. I'm your moderator, Michelle Corey. I am clearly from Miami. I founded Frequency Media, which is a podcast production and audio innovation company, which is also why I'll be providing the 3-second delayed custom sound design today, including the horn you just heard. So we'll be talking a little bit about my founder's journey through the conversation, but that gives you a little idea of who I am. So I'm gonna go just like the way I see you on my screen. So Dana Weeks, who are you and what is your company?
Hi, I'm Dana Weeks, and I am the CEO of MedTrans Go, and we are a business-to-business startup that addresses the cancellation problems of in healthcare for healthcare providers by providing transportation, interpretation, telemedicine, and prescription delivery all in one integrated platform. I'm looking forward to talking to you more. I'm actually a New Yorker who is now here in Atlanta, and so I feel that I'm a piece of all of that. But you brought up Miami, so I figured I would go ahead and rep New York, actually a little bit of California, and here now in Georgia.
Hi, I guess I'll just jump right
Carrie.
in. Yeah, okay. Hi, I am Carrie Schrader. I am the CEO and co-founder of Mixtros. The one thing I can say is my co-founder, I couldn't find one, so I had my own. My daughter is my co-founder, and Mixtros is a SaaS platform that connects and engages attendees in venues just like this. In real time while collecting custom data for the event organizer. And we started off in the live with the live feature, and you can believe something happened this year that moved us to virtual. We are currently headquartered here in Birmingham, Alabama. We got here because we were able to raise $1 million plus a couple years ago, making my daughter and myself the 37th and 38th Black females to ever to do that in pre-seed and tech. And we're shouting out our home cities. Hello, Cleveland, Ohio. How are you? But no, I'm so glad to be here. Thank you.
Okay. Job at like doing the premonition thing, but Sandeep, you're up next.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sandeep Ahuja. I'm the founder and CEO at CoveTool. At CoveTool, we're actually redesigning the way that buildings are designed and built. So buildings are 40% of all carbon emissions, and CoveTool figures out ways to optimize for construction cost while meeting the local energy regulation. So it's a B2B SaaS platform. And since it is the Startup Atlanta Week, I'm definitely a very proud Georgia Tech grad. So go Jackets.
Ooh. Okay, so now Sarah.
Well, hello. First of all, I'm just so honored to be on this panel with such amazing women, and thank you, Michelle, for hosting it all. My name is Sarah Roadhorse, CEO of ePerks, and ePerks is the first severance automation platform that helps companies with terminations with compassion and compliance. So we really guide HR through workforce reductions from start to finish, and do the assessments of WARN and Title VII as part of that process. And with everyone mentioning their hometowns, I'm originally from Illinois, Chicago, turned a Midwesterner, turned Southerner, but been here in Atlanta for the last 20 years. So it's my new home.
And I'll hop in.
Heck yes, amazing. Okay, Angela.
Thanks. Angela Fusaro, co-founder and CEO of Physician 360. I am an emergency medicine physician who completely reimagined the practice of urgent care. Physician 360 is a virtual health clinic. We transform neighborhood pharmacies into urgent cares by empowering them with access to on-demand telemedicine, consultations, and rapid tests for simple medical conditions like strep, flu, and urinary tract infection. We currently work with about 1,000 pharmacies throughout the country, one of which is close to my hometown, which is Danbury, Connecticut, which is famous for really nothing. So if you know of Danbury, you may have
John Oliver.
Yeah, exactly. Now we're on the map.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yes. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor because these ladies are just so boss, and I'm glad to be a part of it. Thank you.
Hopefully my delay isn't too bad anymore. I found a way to hopefully catch up. Am I still delayed?
It's better. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're getting good.
It's better? Okay, because it's now you at a certain point you started speeding up when you were talking, Angela, so I could tell my internet was catching up. Yes. Okay,
Well,
so this is such a amazing and diverse panel from where we come from, generations, from what we do, our races, our ethnic backgrounds. That this is why when we all got together and first started planning this session, there was just so much passion about even though we're so diverse, there are so many commonalities and so many common experiences, but also very different challenges because of that diversity. So, you know, the people who are listening right now, whether you're in the present moment with us or in the future, high future, you're going to get a lot from this, because what we want to do is not just air some of those challenges to prepare you, especially if you're a woman or a woman of color who is a startup founder who's about to be, who maybe was on the fence and then watched this and realized like, hey, you're a badass, you can do it, and you have support, and there's other people going through this too. But you're going to get those forewarnings of what you might be experiencing in the future. And then also, hopefully you come away with some practical advice and guidance as well. And maybe some things that you hadn't really thought about, like flexing fun in different ways, flexing your feminine power as a leader, and things like that. So with that quick recap, we're going to start with funding, which is, of course, where all of us start, which is how am I going to pay for the dang thing? And so we have a really awesome panel because half of us bootstrapped and half of us sought funding at the very beginning. And so I want to start with those who found investment dollars. Carrie, you and your daughter have accomplished something really phenomenal and historic, unfortunately historic, but also like that's what our present reality is. So it's pretty exceptional. Walk us through your funding journey.
Well, I have to say, we didn't find it. We had to go out hustling it up.
Amen.
So
true.
We've done a hybrid. We did we started off bootstrapping. I bootstrapped my daughter Sandal Strap. That's our little joke. And then we were able to raise $200,000 through friends and family. When women of color were only raising $36,000, but we never got money all at once. And so that $200,000 lasted us almost 2.5 years. So that'll tell you what a tight budget we had. And so we actually won Rise of the Rest. And so the Rise of the Rest seed fund kicked off that 100,000, and we raised more than another 900,000. But it was, I will tell you, as probably the oldest person on this panel, although I look young, I know you guys are shocked. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, including anything I've done in my professional career and corporate, 200s and 500s, where you are just so exposed to people, trying to tell your story, trying to keep your business going, and trying to understand the dynamics of fundraising, which it should be called hell raising because it's not fun. And the other thing I'll say is the cost associated with it is not as easy as well, if you can find somebody to give you X amount of dollars, then that's it. You have to consider the legal cost. And if you're using like a broker to broker to deal, which we didn't, but we still, like, the legal costs were unbelievable to get, 20 pages of paper put together. So it's definitely a process. And if you're thinking about doing it, you need to reach out to someone who has done it. The other thing I say, they told us very early on, you'll talk to 100 people before you get a yes. And my daughter and I are very confident. We're like, oh, that's what losers do. We'll get it done with 3 people. So like 199 people later, we're like, oh Lord, this is true. So you really, it really strengthens your character. But what my best advice would be, talk to somebody who has done it so that you don't do the same crazy things, and that, quite frankly, you don't approach people who will waste your time and not give you a penny.
Why do you think you were only the 34th? What are the stats? The 34th and 38th?
34th
and 35th? 37th. Wow. Okay. Why do you think that is? That you were only the 37th and 38th Black women to receive funding in that way?
It's this spacesuit I got on, this Earth suit, because we are very intelligent. I'm very intelligent. I have an MBA, have worked 25 years in HR. I have all the senior certification. My daughter's pretty smart too. She has her undergrad degree. She's worked for LeBron James. She's done stuff for Oprah, the Olympics. And despite of all of that, and even when we walk into rooms and say, look, we're not even in debt and we've bootstrapped, check. We're full-time, check. We even have clients in our beta, check. But it was always one more thing. It was 2 more things. It was, well, heck, you gave this person, white male, $500,000, and he had something scribbled out on a piece of paper. We have a plan. I actually even have QuickBooks online. So all kind of things. And real talk it is this Earth suit. And I'm hoping we're getting to a point with panels like this and successful women like this, and old girl who is going to be in the White House on January 20th, that shows people that everybody can do it. And if you actually are so statistically driven, stats show that we here get the job done. And so that's it. Amen.
Preach. Yes. Spacesuits are, I love that you put it like that, because it really is like just this Earth suit, and everything within us is so parallel, so the same. So I'm glad that we're in this shift as a society. You also mentioned something, and I want to open this up to others, that doesn't come up off fees associated. So I think not a lot of people talk about that side of seeking investment, and the fact that if you have an agreement where someone's giving you money, there's like a billion different possible terms for that, a billion ways to slice and dice it, and that you need someone, an attorney who has specific experience in that area to help define those terms in a way that is going to in fact protect you and the investor, but mainly you, to make sure that if there's an acquisition, a sale, or sudden success or failure, that everyone's protected. So does anybody have weigh in on what the legal process of seeking funding was like for them?
I'm happy to weigh in because we just recently closed our Series A round. It was not cheap. I'll definitely give us that. I think the good thing for us was that we have been working with kind of the same attorney since our first round, our seed round. So when we went for the 5.7 million, it was like, we just like, okay, it's the same one. And we just kind of calculated and we just kind of built that into the model. So we expected it. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely not cheap. It's not an inconsiderable amount. It's like almost like a whole team member, a very expensive team member that you're paying just out front to get a deal done.
I think Carrie brought up a very interesting point, that adds to what Sandeep was saying too, which is if you continue to reach out to networks that you have, and friends and folks who are within the arena to help you kind of navigate beyond just who you're paying for legal or who you're paying to get financial advice. And that there are a lot of ways in which you can kind of navigate that and make sure that you are negotiating the right deal, making sure that you stay as the founder sound and a big part of it. And so I think it's a good point to say that you're going to inevitably spend a lot of money on legal. You're going to spend a lot of money in different places. But if you have some of the right guidance, and oftentimes I think that's where panels like this and just networks like this, where you're talking to other female CEOs, you can find out who are the people that you can find to be your allies, to be your sponsors, to be the networks, the connections, and sort of like invite you to certain tables that allow you to have that benefit.
I think that's great. I'd love to weigh in just a second on that. I mean, as far as for me, you know, we're still bootstrapped, but I've been very active in doing the pitch contests. That has been a tremendous, and Atlanta's really, I mean, I've just been so impressed with the startup community. It's been like a warm embrace kind of coming into it. You know, did startup, was a finalist in Startup Runway, and did Access Atlanta, and Raise as well with Emory. And with each of these programs, there's mentors. So, you know, I kind of went into it blind, and then, you know, Startup Runway was a great place to get started and really understand what it's all about. And they do a mock board session, and then Access Atlanta, they paired us with a VC that walked us through the financials, talked us through like the legal components. So just being able to participate in those programs that are offered through the community has been a wonderful educational opportunity for me to prepare. We're bootstrapped right now, but we know at some point we're going to likely raise, and you know, we're trying to wait as long as possible to build out that equity. But you know, being able to kind of navigate and see what's out there and participate in those pitch programs and get connected with the different mentors, I mean, it's been invaluable.
Thanks, Sarah. I was going to add to that I think a lot of this, if we tie all these concepts together, it comes down to seeking out the right investor, because I think the right investor helps mitigate that challenge that all of us are alluding to, which is that especially in a seed or a pre-seed stage, a lot of what they're betting on has to do with the founder. As you get into the later stages of your company, the financials speak for themselves and it becomes much more of a numbers game. But in that early phase, it's about you as a founder. And so if you're speaking with investors who already understand the imbalance in how we are perceived as founders, if they understand the tax on being different, if they understand how we are expected to overcompensate compared to our peers, you know, our male counterparts, I think that goes a long way to one, getting the opportunity to begin with, but then many of these same investors are attuned to the fact that you don't want to raise $500,000 and then have 10% of it go to your legal fees. So when we raised our seed round, you know, the group that made that initial investment, which is Valor, were working with an attorney who had a very compartmentalized fee. It was a very modest fee. So I think those things tend to go hand in hand. Investors who are already looking for founders like us are aware of these challenges and will do everything they can to address them in a very practical way.
And not to
What do you say to someone?
I was just going to say not to talk too long on the lawyer topic, but for that particular one, Angela, I think you brought up a really cool point where, you know, we can kind of, you know, investors have networks and we can link to that. For that particular one, there's just one piece of advice that I found really helpful in TechCrunch, which basically was that your attorney is doing one deal with you, but they might be doing 10 deals with your investor because they're investing in so many different startups. So not to say to be suspicious or judge their motives or whatnot, but I think it's just something to keep in mind, you know?
Mm-hmm. And another point that I love that Angela brought up about the ecosystem is that her particular initial investment was from a woman-owned VC. And, additionally, we need more women CEOs. We also need more women in VC. We all need more women, in all of the arenas that allow us to be seen and be heard for many of the ways that we thrive and excel.
And that's actually a good segue because, we're talking here about representation. We're talking here about finding a source of funding or a funding partner who can bring more to the table than just their money. So to that point, what do you say to someone who's like, yeah, well, we've already talked about how hard it is and how rare it is for a woman founder to secure funding. I think it's about 2% of all VC funds go to women, which is bonkers given we're half of the world's population. Crazy. So, there's a woman founder out there. She's found someone who's like, listen, I will give you this money. Just take it. I don't care what you do with it. I don't want to be super involved. How do you counsel that kind of person in making that decision?
I'll go. I definitely say you have to make sure when you're taking money from people, they are people that you're like, because everything is good when it's good, but when it's bad, it's not. And so I would never take money from someone blindly like that, because I want to know what's going to go on. And we're very fortunate. And again, we're smarter than people give us credit for, because between Ashley and I, we still own 90% of Mixtros, even with this next round that we are about to close when it closes. So you really have to be smart. And there are these people that you like. We started off where, when you don't know the game, it was like, please, please, please. But as you start commanding the game and you know that you have a good product, now I have to like you too. So, because there are a lot of people with money, and unfortunately it takes you to keep going through the process to find out who these secret people are. But once you do, now I know that I have something of value, and I'm going to be very careful. And at this point, we are looking for more than just money, those resources of connectivity and some guidance and maybe some legal help, whatever that could be to offset some of the costs 100%. But I actually know a founder of color who got into a bad deal with somebody like that, and it has turned her company upside down, and she's ready to scale, but the secret money is not going to allow her to.
And kind of to echo what Terry is
that's
talking
actually
about.
A really good point.
It's okay, go for it.
I'm definitely still on a delay, huh? Who is this Cassie? Are you guys seeing a Cassie Ratliff?
Yeah,
certainly do.
Yeah, red.
Hello. Oh, goodbye. All right. That was exciting. That was like chat room roulette for a second. No, but to that point, if somebody's giving you money that also, even if they have the best of intentions, and I mean, honestly, what you just said about things being good now, but having to get ahead of things being bad or potentially going awry in the future is how I approach all relationships, all like with your employees, with your contractors, with your spouses. Like, you have to plan for the worst and appreciate the best, right? But at the same time, even if nothing ever goes awry, being given loads of cash with no other resources or support is great. But it means that you're going to have to take that money and do all of it yourself from the ground up. So some of the things that would be more efficient and effective, it is highly valuable to take somebody else's resources versus the equivalent amount of dollars that you would then have to add to your plate, if that makes sense. So, you have to also think about what are the things that drain you, and where are the people who have the networks or the capabilities to supplement you in ways that are going to leave you even more refreshed to do the work that you love with your company, rather than having to be in the weeds with the stuff that drains you.
Yeah, I mean, the point that I was getting ready to make as well, which is completely echoing what both of you have said, is sure, things can go bad when things go bad, but that's going to happen regardless, right? But I do think that when you are working with an investor that is good and that understands your business and understands the vision, I believe magic happens. I really do believe that it's a level of value and being able to anticipate things that you as a, at least for me, like, you know, or any first time founder wouldn't necessarily anticipate, which I think is just the kind of value it's hard to put a price on. And even in addition to that, when problems do happen, well, you kind of get through it together. But to the point of having to do it yourself, I think a great investor, an okay investor, not great investor, it's your company. We kind of have to build it ourselves regardless.
Can I make a point about that? I was looking at the chat too, and just they were reading. I think it's Khadija who was talking about just energy in general. And one of the things that I felt, and we've bootstrapped, but we're now at a point where we're ready to scale, and so now we're starting to raise money and get out there and have that conversation. But being able to have the past year and a half where we're really focusing on our team and the growth and developing the things that we need with our own voices and putting the people around us that give us that really good energy. And for me, you know, diversity in race and gender and that kind of a team, I think allows for us to really become stronger and be in a position to raise money from a place of strength, kind of to what Carrie was saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about funding. I'm so glad we touched on alignment or energy, you know, and sharing that energy. Energy is a great word for it because you can combine, you know, your superpowers, and that creates a larger energy. And I'm sort of the more radical anti-capitalism capitalist among the group. Everyone's like, huh? But it's because I don't believe that it's just business. That phrase I find so ridiculous because business is just made up by people. You know, like I'm sitting here in a cardigan. My cat was meowing earlier, so I had to mute. Like I'm just a person building a business, and the business only exists because it is this coming together of all the people working on it and forming one energy from that shared effort, which is so beautiful. So anytime anyone's like, it's just business, I'm like, well, that's pretty personal, isn't it? So with all these things, though, we are seeing the more businessy side of the personal, which is legal fees and, you know, finding investors and the obstacles that living in the earth suit, like Carrie said earlier, of womanhood, but also being a woman of color and starting a company, which most of us on this panel are. You know, I want to explore that a little bit more, you know, and from that pragmatic perspective of like how you have handled the journey. At what point did you realize, oh, wait, this is harder for me because I'm a woman of color? And how did you respond to that and move past it? You know, and that's me putting words in your mouth. So just share your own experience.
Are we going in any particular order, or I'll just jump right out there? My career was in manufacturing, so I was real used to working with all male teams and being the only female on the team, on the regional team or whatever it is we were doing. So I thought that I was hardened to every situation. And again, at my age, where I am in my career, it was before Me Too, Black People Rule, and all of that. So it was truly me hustling in this earth suit with 9, 10 men that were normally white. So when I jumped over to this, I had thought I had broke the system that if you just work real hard and on top of your game, things will just fall in line. I honestly believe that. Like we were like, okay, I figured it out. And I got slapped around, like, you know, not literally, but figuratively, of people wanted me to go back to the very beginning of how I was treated in my HR career to break back into entrepreneurship, and I wasn't having it. And so we've done things. My daughter and I both are pretty outspoken. I truly believe in starting with honey and before I get to vinegar, but I can get to vinegar from 0 to 60. So that we wore a shirt at a conference that actually got us in our first Forbes article that said Black female founder and fund me. And on the back said, got seed. And it threw a conference in New Orleans up in just craziness. We had white guys like, what if we were that? What would you say? I was like, you're getting all the funding. We're not. And nobody knows. You have the nerve to walk up to me, a professional, older woman, I'll say, with no respect. I've actually been at conferences and people come up to me and say, gin and tonic. And I'm like, what does that mean? Is that like a password? Like they thought I was the server, and that's no joke. And so you just have to learn how to drive through it, but I can get to the point real quick.
Yeah, I think, Carrie, you touched on two things that I would love to echo. I think the first has to do with, one thing that I have found is a lot of the insult, it comes in the form of something very small, but it's put out there, like, it's in the form of a comment, it's in the form of a label, it's in the form of someone calling me a nurse when I'm not, in fact, a nurse, making assumptions. And so I think these things happen. And one thing I found was that the person will put the comment out there, but then once they put it out there, it's actually me who's left sitting with it. And there's all of this energy expounded around, well, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to correct the situation? And I found that it actually exacerbated it for me. Not only did it exhaust me, but it would make me feel bad if I didn't kind of correct it every time. Then I felt like I was actually part of the problem. Am I complacently allowing you to make certain assumptions about me based on my gender? And so I think one thing that helped me was, number one, like forgiving myself if I wasn't always able to be like the corrector, the champion of equality in every situation, but also figuring out what things I absolutely was not going to tolerate, because there's a lot of stuff that's coming at you all the time. And some of it just has to be non-negotiable. So having boundaries set beforehand, so I didn't have to kind of navigate that every time in real time. And the other thing that I'll say related to Carrie's comments are, and I haven't looked at the list in the chat as to who is here today, but I think part of what really addresses this issue of we're having a different experience out here in the world based on gender is when both genders come together at the table and see it as all of our responsibilities to kind of course correct. I've been on a lot of panels where the second people see that it's about diversity or it's about inclusion or it's about women empowerment, the dudes don't show up. And I feel like until we have majorities, whether it be when you're talking race, when you're talking about gender, when you're talking about disability, until you have people who are part of the majority seeing this as just as much their problem as it is ours, that's really when we're going to start moving the needle.
Yeah,
So.
No, that makes a lot of sense, Angela. And just to kind of point into that, the way that I tackled it is, of course, I was not naive to the metrics. It's very obvious where the metrics lie. It's very obvious how much women raise and how many more pitches they have to make to get the same amount of money. Well, same amount of money is not possible. To get 40% of the amount of money, how many more pitches women have to make? The data is pretty clear. So I think for me, I knew and just expected it, and just keep going, because if I do make it to where I want to take the company, and Cove Tool is able to fight climate change, and Cove Tool is able to beat the odds, and Cove Tool is able to change and democratize the construction industry, well, then I will be in a position to help 20, 50, 100 more women who won't be in a position similar to myself, because I don't have that bias. And I think that there's quite fantastic organizations. There's one called All Raise that I found really, really helpful as well, which is led by all women CEOs. And they were just giving, one-on-one feedback on how to pitch. It's just a really safe community. And I think we just need more. And that's kind of what keeps driving me too. It's like, okay, I have to do that, because of course I want to fight climate change, and of course I want to make this a big success. But because I really have to, I just want to,
Responding a little bit to what Michelle was saying, and then also Sandeep, the first really is that being a startup CEO is there's a freedom in that. Again, you can look at the statistics within startups, but you can also look at the statistic within corporations. And, you know, at least in a startup situation, especially if you're a founder or you're deeply involved in the creation of it, you're creating wealth in a way that you can't if you're going up the ladder and depending on someone within a corporate scenario. So I think that that's, you know, a very important way to feel empowered and to feel that you are there. And the other part that Sandeep was talking about was finding this safe space. And, you know, in some senses, you know, I know I'm competent. I know my degrees. I know my background. I know I'm very literate in many different arenas, but there are ways that I'm not aware of things. And so being in this position, you also don't want to show sometimes your vulnerabilities. And so finding those places that you can be safe, and then you can say, you know what, actually, I don't really understand that. Can you explain, without feeling that this is going to put you at a disadvantage where you don't know what you're talking about, I think is key and critical in being able to continue to still say confident. I know Sarah was going to say something, so I.
Oh yeah, well, I'm just here saying yes, completely agree, and I on both fronts. I think one is and Sandeep said it as well. It's confidence, right? I mean, us women, we've been out there, we've been hustling, we've been busting our butts, we've been doing it in the corporate world. I know I worked in the technology world and, you know, made it to kind of the most senior woman out there, you know, all men, right, alongside of me. And, you know I could do this. And I kind of hit a glass ceiling, which is what drove me to entrepreneurship. I'm like, I've been launching SaaS products successfully for 20 years. I can do this. And, you know, I think women, so many times they wait for perfect before they think they have the confidence, you know. I mean, you know, I just know so many men, they're like, yeah, I got this. And, you know, they're not, you know, they're maybe right here, we're way up here, and we're debating whether or not we have it. And, you know, for any women out there, you know, you got it. I know you got it, because the reality, you've been working twice as hard to get where you are. And if you can just put that effort forward and believe in yourself, you know, there's so much that comes with it. And so, you know, that's one thing I would say. And then, you know, to Dana's point is like finding your tribe. I just went through Launchpad 2X, which is a wonderful program here in Atlanta. It's from founder to CEO, and with Bernie and Christy there. And it's all about having those comfortable conversations, being able to lean on others that have gone through your situation, get some advice, learn and educate. So, you know, that program was wonderful, and just educating on the fundraising process and the different aspects of it, and being able to have those conversations and know that, you know, we're all going to be $20 million companies in a couple of years. So it's an exciting journey to just see all of you ladies succeed, and you know, for those out there that are considering it, you know, go for it.
I can't hear her. Can you guys hear her?
Angela, you're on mute.
There you go. Okay. To echo, you know, to supplement what you were saying, Sarah, I get asked, and I'm sure you ladies do as well, you know, what is the secret sauce, or what is the thing that like has made you successful? And I feel like it's there. First of all, there is no secret sauce, but it is literally a belief that you can figure it out, right?
Yeah.
That is the trait. The trait is and the confidence to say, I can at least, just as good as anyone else, figure it out. And I think that's what you're talking about. You can't wait until you know it all. You never know it all. It's right. It's the tenacity to say, I'm going to figure it out, or I can put the right team together who will figure it out.
Yeah.
But I am no better or worse off than anybody else to try this. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, there's a few things that I heard that I just wanted to reiterate because it's so important. Sandeep, I love how you made the point of like, look, I navigated the landscape as a woman founder because I knew what to expect. I knew that it was coming. That actually makes all the difference, at least for me. As long as I know that this path is going to be treacherous, or it's going to be difficult, or I'm going to have to swim, bike, and run to get there, then fine. I can build myself up mentally for that challenge and make it happen. Sometimes it's best not to know just how hard it's going to be. You know, I wonder if Carrie, you and your daughter would have like been so at it if you knew it was going to take 199 pitch presentations. I'm sure you would have, because I mean, tenaciousness, right? Tenacity. But like, sometimes it's easier not to know the whole story. I think in this case, knowing that you're going to have that thick skin and you're going to have to fight a little harder, a lot harder, and you're going to have to be a lot smarter, and you're going to have to be buttoned up, it actually helps. So I appreciate you all for sharing your story in that way. Also, to just like echo what Sandeep and Dana were saying, you don't know what you don't know. And when it comes to starting a new company, especially a tech company or a company that's going to seek funding in some way, there is so much to not know. and likewise, there's so much to know. I also went through the core program at Launchpad 2X, and it's phenomenal. And I announced the existence of Frequency, I'll never forget it, like with a big hippopotamus feature on like the second day of the boot camp. And it was just to be there with like women founders and CEOs and to celebrate together was something extraordinary. And then I also want to shout out everybody who's here with us right now. There's actually a lot of dudes in the room right now, and they're engaged, and there's like some comments coming through, and I really love that, because this is a conversation about human, and it applies to everybody, because the more aware you can be, the better you are as a human. You know, that's what we're here to do in my mind. I also want to encourage y'all to, if you have questions about funding, I think we're going to touch on bootstrapping in just a moment, but if you have specific questions or you want us to cover our experiences in certain areas with funding, please put it in the comments and we'll take a peek at those. So bootstrapping, you know, Dana, you did mention like part of being a startup founder is the freedom. My personal journey for starting a company was because I was not finding opportunities. And, you know, I'm very palatable as a white passing Latina, but the truth is I'm a very proud child of immigrants and a Colombian woman who is, you know, loud, and I don't make myself small or quiet. And so it is when I embrace my full persona as this like larger than life Latina that I was coming up against constant friction with men in the workplace or with older women, as we talked about in our original little get to know each other session. And so I kept coming up against, as if I kept being my bigger version of myself, I was told I was too aggressive or I wasn't paid enough. I was put into positions of leadership, but never given more money. And my big impetus, you know, was the theory like, hey, I bet you if I work this hard for myself, I can make 10 times more money. And y'all, spoiler alert, I was right. And not only that, but I was able to set the boundaries of respect for myself. And there is no ceiling when I'm involved. And so, you know, that led me to my path with Frequency, which started with what I thought was, you know, I'm a millennial. So I thought like, of course, the thing you do is you raise money when you're going to start a company. And so I did the Dog and Pony show at the beginning. And I realized pretty quickly that, like, first of all, as a early stage company, still like making revenue, but not much, and still have a whole road of proving ourselves to embark on. We were going to be a bargain deal for anyone who came in at the very beginning. You know, they were going to, you know, if we were lucky, throw $1 million at us and ask for 20+% of the company. That's like that bargain deal, right? Because they're like, yeah, I don't know, you may not be the hot stuff you think you are. Whereas now, just over 2 years later, we've been profitable from day one. Our clients include Coca-Cola, Diane von Furstenberg, Spotify, Apple, and those were our clients from the early days. So now we're not such a bargain deal anymore, are we? So I did decide to like pursue the bootstrapping path because I had this incredible faith that there was something to the business that I was starting, and that if we did need to raise funds, we were going to do it later on when the investors coming on board were going to feel like blessed and honored to be part of the vision that is Frequency. So that's a little bit about my background with bootstrapping, and where I am today is still having bootstrapped the company to this day. We are not a tech company, we're a service-based production business, so it's very different, right? So I want to hear from some of you that actually do have tech companies that you have bootstrapped to this very day, and what that journey has been like. Why did you choose bootstrapping?
I mean, Sarah, you want to start?
Sure, I can jump in. So, we didn't even think of it another way. So, I didn't really know about the startup community. Like, I didn't even think of going and getting investment. I just knew I wanted to start a company. I'd launched, software products my whole career, and my partner and I was fortunate enough to have exited. I've been at startup that went public. As part of my role there, I led their government division, and within the first 12 minutes of launching that division, we closed $18 million. So I was fortunate in the sense that at the end of the year, we went IPO, went public. I had an opportunity to exit there before I went on to ADP. And so I had some reserves that I could invest in my own company, and I partnered with my co-founder Janice, who's amazing, and she and I kind of were of the same mind, and we went out and we had this great grand idea. We're going to do a benefit enrollment system, and we went, and I'm out there talking to everyone and hustling, and we're having great conversations. And I got to talking with our now current client. They said that's a wonderful benefit enrollment system that we invested in. And they said, but I have one of those. What I really need is a severance automation solution. And so we ended up working with them and built and delivered our solution that is now today and growing. And we continuously are getting growing and more activity on our platform. But the reality there was it's the key to bootstrapping is customers. At least in our world. And kind of my thought is the best way to fund your company is with customers. And so that's a little bit of my mentality. And we were fortunate to be able to have a customer to help grow with and mature with. It helps from a use case standpoint. It helps from a funding standpoint. It helps on so many different platforms on that basis. So we've been very fortunate in that regard. And, as we've now I'm exploring, I've been in multiple pitch contests and kind of going down that path. It's interesting because, I'm like, do we stay bootstrap or do we raise funds? And I continuously hover along that line. But advice I've gotten is bootstrap as long as you can, and then turn to raise the funds. And there's value in both because you can move fast with it. And we are getting to a point where we can see those golden nuggets that if we could just do this, we could support that many more clients. So, we're continuously kind of hovering on that line. But, we've been, fortunate enough to be able to bootstrap like you, Michelle, with current clients.
Yeah. And I would say my journey is similar to Michelle's and Sarah's in that, we had the privilege to be able to bootstrap and have some small angel investors early on to allow us to kind of grow and do what we needed. And I think this year it became even more important because when COVID hit and also being in healthcare, we were able to sort of bring the team together. And I think a lot of the team kind of were invested in it and in feeling that they had that ownership in success. And we sort of all kind of pitched in and figured out how we were going to pivot and survive it. And I think, in March and April, we started to adapt and change some of our technology so that we can better suit the clients and better suit the environment that I think we're ready to have and handle given COVID. And now this was sort of a realization of all of that. And I think, and again, because we were bootstrapped, I think having an additional layer of someone else who may have seen a different direction would have made it a little bit more challenging for us to have done a quick pivot and added some things and adjusted our business model to kind of surf and navigate. But we had a founder who's in healthcare. We're able to sort of integrate and pull people in a way. And so it's sort of an answer to your question, but I also feel that it gave us, at least internally, a feeling of more power during a time and a year that we were very powerless, that was very uncertain.
I totally agree, Dana. Like our team has totally rallied me on it. Anytime I bring up we're going to raise, they're like, no, we can do it. We can do it. And so it's almost like this momentum behind us, this energy, this ownership. I think a lot of it is like, this is ours. This is tangible. We are doing it. We are making a difference has really been able to drive, and the talent that we have on our team is just top notch, that they are just putting their whole hearts into the business to make it successful. And I think in part it is because we're doing things like the unbelievable. Like everyone's like, oh, Sarah. I'm like, I know, swear, I'm going to be able to do this. And here we are. So, and they're doing it too. So that is an exciting part. And the other point I would say is that, funds are tight when you're bootstrapping. And I think, it's not only that, times are tough with COVID. Like when things are really, really tough and difficult, like that's when sometimes magic happens. Like, the things that are happening with the vaccines, the timeline that's so short that, there's just genius going on, that people are rallying behind a purpose. And with us being bootstrapped, it's like, funds are tight. We have to be very deliberate about where every single penny goes and have to make a conscious decision of where every minute of our time goes. And so, there's an energy behind it that's exciting.
You're so right. And I love hearing about how your employees are rallied behind that common purpose. And it brings up the point that like, one of the most challenging parts of bootstrapping for me has also been one of the biggest opportunities for creating an extraordinary culture. And I built Frequency as culture first, which means that sounds very buzzy, but actually like from a tangible perspective. And Khadija has an excellent question, which is like, as the owner of a startup company looking to begin the process of bootstrapping, what are some lessons we've learned in starting the process that we wish we'd learned sooner? What I'll tell you is something I did that I'm glad I did pretty soon in the process, which was I officially opened for business with Frequency Media in August of 2018. And by November had signed on Coca-Cola as one of our first full service production clients. And then very quickly things started snowballing. And I made the call in January to stop new business efforts in order to put all of that energy into building our culture intentionally. So who are we? What do we stand for? What are we aligning around? And what are our values? And so I spent a lot of time bringing the team together, talking about who we are. What is that company of the future that we believe in, that sits outside of the laws of capitalism, which is profits over people. And we did a lot of intentional culture forming and value setting at the beginning. And let me tell you something, the summer of this year was an absolute test of that culture. I have never been through a tougher time as a startup founder in my life. And it is a time when I saw my team members melting down. All of us were melting down. All of us were the rawest we've ever been. We had one major betrayal on the team that rocked us. And we healed from it and grew closer and stronger, which I didn't think was going to happen. And all of that was the true test of forming that foundation from the beginning. So that is one thing that I'm very grateful I did, even though it felt so counterintuitive to not be seeking money, like the new customers. Mind you, in the meantime, we also brought on Apple, and they just came to us. They just were magnetized in that process. So there's also something to carrying a very firm belief in what you stand for and what your purpose is, because I strongly have seen through Frequency that it magnetizes the exact kind of customer that we're looking for. And then the other answer that I have to this, Khadija, is that I am so glad that very early on, especially like as the daughter of immigrants and as a Latina, I was always it was always instilled in me that like you need to basically drill yourself into the ground for every penny. That's not a good for a startup founder to have, especially a woman, because that means that you're never going to see yourself as worthy of being that $20 million company that Sarah is dead on about all of us, you know, being on the track to be or already at. And so I had to do a lot of unraveling of that. And early on, I had these amazing mentors and advisors who are badass women CEOs and also men who would be like, don't be a penny wise and a pound foolish. Don't be a penny wise and a pound foolish. And in a bootstrapped environment, that is everything. And that means consider all of your options. I was a penny wise with a few of my customers that were the biggest and had to wait 6 months to get paid like $70,000. That's a big deal when you're at the beginning of your journey and your service-based business. So I've learned the hard way, but also really glad that I've been very cash conservative because we've gotten through not having the $70,000. We made it, and I've never taken on any kind of debt. So that's a big one.
I have to say,
any other advice you all have?
I have to say, the founder that started off bootstrapping, I think all of this is good and admirable, but in technology where we are, you have to be able to move faster. And I believe that people need, women, men alike, but women, you need to understand what is your real financial picture. During this whole thing, my husband retired early to be a stay-at-home dad, so I was the breadwinner. So we did have an advantage of more financial resources than most women of color run families might have. But at the same time, as an older person, I was not willing to ever jeopardize our assets that we have. And so I do think you need to think about it. It depends on, you know, what sector you're running in and all of those kind of things. This is hard. And so if you add on top of it, oh, heck, how am I going to get groceries? Oh, heck, my car is broke. Anything like that will get you out of the game quicker. And so my just old time advice is make sure your resources are straight. Make sure if you have a husband, wife, partner, whatever, like everybody understands the game. I mean, one of my funniest stories is in one of my last neighborhood, I started planting my own flowers, which I found out was taboo because we would have people that we paid to do that. But I was like, well, I could either put that money into Mixtros or these flower beds. Literally, I had 25 of my neighbors gathered outside, like, what's going on? Why are you planting? Do you need a name of somebody? I'm like, yeah, somebody give me some plants for free. Okay, so you just got to consider that.
And just kind of, I was just going to say, just on the completely opposite side of that spectrum, there's also ways to do it with zero planning whatsoever. So for me, it was literally I was on my nice, awesome, stable job, and we just decided that I was going to quit it and start a consulting company. Did I have savings? No. Did I have a plan? No. Did I have customers or clients that I was going to leave with? No. I just had a lot of passion, a lot of desire, and the knowledge. I just felt like I could do it and that I was going to do it. And then I did. I just called literally every single person until somebody was like, okay, we're going to give you some business. It's like, okay, great. I'm going to take your business.
That goes back to Angela's point. It's all about that tenacity, that vision, and the confidence.
Yes.
And you know, the idea about tenacity and vision makes me think about the fact that, you know, women are really equipped to navigate through this time and to pivot. I mean, we had to pivot a lot in terms of changing the way we work, dealing with the team, you know, finding new and different ways for people to engage. And what we've seen, especially with our Zoom Life and our other platforms that allow us to video in, that we now start to integrate a lot of our home and personal life into our work in a way that we didn't before. And I think as women and as women leaders, we are very good at being able to bring out people's different challenges that are starting to enter into the way in which they work, whether it be having to deal with kids who are working at home because they're online, or having to navigate partners losing jobs, or a lot of those things. And I think, it's a superhero skill set that sometimes I find is really evident in women, and just even having that diverse thought within the group is so important. And so I like that about the women here, and I like that about seeing women leaders.
I was going to make one point to what Carrie had said earlier. So we also were a bootstrap company until a point, and then raised capital. I think it's important to have, what I would, I guess, say is like it's a roadmap of at what stage your company will increase in value, and at what stage, essentially, where are the inflection points, right? Because to Carrie's point, you might be okay growing at X rate until a certain inflection point, in which case you might have to grow much quicker, and that just isn't feasible on a bootstrap, model. So I think having that roadmap, at least to some degree, planned out ahead of time, is really helpful. With everything that happened this year with COVID for us, if we did not have venture capital on board, we would not have been able to seize the opportunity that came with COVID. Yeah. We were uniquely positioned to play a role in the pandemic. And so to that point, and obviously you can't prepare for something that exceptional, but I think at least preparing for the predictable growth inflection points allows you to understand when it makes sense to fundraise and when it doesn't.
Yeah. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, you got to follow your gut. And I think that that's another area. We had a whole part of this conversation. We're an hour in now, but we had a whole part of this conversation we wanted to dedicate to how well positioned women are with that feminine energy, leveraging it in its very many ways. But one of the ways women excel is through intuition. So if you are someone who can open yourself to your intuition, women tend to have it pretty powerfully, and it's up to you to listen. And I would say that the bottom line that we're clearly hearing across the board here is you have to follow your gut when it comes to finding the right funder. If it feels off, it is off. When it comes to hiring people, if it feels off, it is off. When it comes to setting your values, bringing on investment, pivoting, if it feels right, it is right. And so sometimes you just have to sit with something that feels right or feels off, just to dig a little deeper. Does this feel off because I'm afraid? If so, F that. Fear, that becomes your best friend. Your frenemy. But if it feels right, does it feel right because of greed? Because greed's not going to get you through the hard parts. That's passion. That's purpose. That what has gotten me through this year is the fact that I cannot imagine myself doing anything other than what I'm doing. So there's just no option than to survive it and then to thrive. So at the end of the day, if you're a woman listening or a feminine energy listening, tap into that incredible gift that you have of intuition. And if you're a man, start developing that through meditation, through going for hikes in the forest, whatever you want to do, start developing that, because that's going to really help to guide when is the opportunity. What is the opportunity to be seized, and should you seize it now? Because, that's what I'm hearing from your story, Angela, is you had that moment where you're it's time to seek funding. Let's flip this switch and move forward. And voila, the opportunity aligned with the intention you set for your actions.
Yes, that is very accurate. I was just thinking back too about when we did seek funding. One thing that we had done before seeking capital, and then this relates to being a technology company and just how you kind of make those pieces of the puzzle fit together, we had very concretely proven the product market fit before we needed to make a huge investment or seek a huge investment to build technology. So I think that is one thing I would advise, especially if you're a technology company, is if there's a way, if there's a surrogate. So for us, that surrogate was using a third-party platform to show that the model we were going to create was going to sell, that it was going to generate revenue. If there's a way to do that with a surrogate product that you don't have to upfront, right out of the gate, to get a huge investment to build, once you prove that concept, this goes back to what I was saying before, your company now has more value. So then when you do need to build it yourself, you can now raise at a higher valuation. So I think doing it with surrogate, with more affordable surrogate products is something that I'd recommend if possible. Now it's not always an option, but in many cases it is.
I want to add on to that.
That's a great point,
Angela, because I will say this. What we can't do is get ourselves as women thinking, because I'm a woman of color, a Latinx, whatever, somebody is just going to give you a big pot of money. It doesn't. At the end of the day, you have to have a sound business plan. My prayer is just let me have the same objective point milestones that you give everybody else. But, I have heard people say even about us, like they raised $1 million, so we should be able to raise $1 million. It's like, we did a whole bunch of stuff, market fit, beta testing, you know what I mean? So I would say that to women, and I'm sure that people who are tuning into this understand there's something about that business piece is first. What I would just hope is that we all had an opportunity to move a real business forward. One of my fantasies is that we could start pitching to investors or to even to clients, like on The Voice, where you're behind the screen, maybe even neutralize your voice and then just put it out there. I truly believe at this point in our journey, Mixed Shows would be going towards the $1 billion mark. Now, there's some stuff going on and I'm feeling really confident, but it's taken way too long with crazy things that are keeping us from that has kept us from getting there faster.
Yeah, I think, there's so many layers to that, but I will say, I do remember reading an article, this is about a year ago, about a female founder who was raising capital while she was pregnant. And she, anecdotally did a little study on how successful she had been, but looking at who actually chose to invest in her. And what she found was that no one who had physically seen that she was pregnant actually wrote her a check. So it's just another piece of this puzzle, which is, okay, like you said, I've got to think about how people are perceiving me just because of my gender. Then I got to think about, how they're perceiving my marital status, my my fertility status, all of these parts. But it was very interesting that anyone who could associate, I guess, in that very tangible way, her femininity with her business, it could be just coincidence, but they didn't write her a check. And so, I mean, it's very real. The assumptions we make about people and their ability, it's very real.
But it's so bizarre. I feel like moms are the best and the most organized with their time. For example, on our team, we have one of our sales team members, and she just recently had her baby. And I kid you not, when she was going to have her delivery at 6:30 a.m., she sent me Slack message with a list of all of her deals that I should update for her so they would know what needs to happen next. And I was like, stop it, go have your baby. And then now she coordinates her time, like she'll work in the evening and she'll just be flexible with her schedule to make sure she gets done what she needs to get done. Gosh, it's got nothing to do with anything.
Oh my gosh, that's powerful. And this actually does segue us into that power of the feminine and how that comes across in the way that we lead our teams. So for instance, when I'm onboarding people onto my team, I often tell them, like, there's some unlearning you're going to have to do. You're going to have to unlearn the way of being a human at a company, because you're allowed to bring your whole self to my company, and no one quite understands what that means until they're in it, and they start realizing this has happened across the board, by the way. They start realizing that they have to process and release traumas from being in toxic workplaces that are like 99% of workplaces in corporate America, and unlearning those ways, and learning how to just show up and be whomever you are. And so for me, that is one of the most powerful aspects of me as a feminine leader, as a leader who is a woman and a powerful woman, is I am a warrior spirit. And so I go to bat hard with some of like the biggest companies in the world, because I don't take any BS. My model is built people first, which means that every single day I'm asking myself, what do my people need? How does this serve my team? Is this am I honoring our values that we share together when I do make this decision for my company? And so that makes everything spin for me. So how are the ways that your womanhood shows up for you as a leader?
Well, I'll just give a quick example. When we started opening back up, so we all went remote for those who could go remote on the team. And when we did start showing back up, I really wanted to keep social distancing amongst the team. And so we got an additional office space elsewhere so we could kind of mix and match team members to kind of interact with each other. And one of the ways that I did that is, on some days I'd have all the women who were working on the team together. And sometimes I'd have a mixture, and sometimes I've had all men. And you can see how some of the conversations changed, and people could be themselves. And I especially noticed it among women when we were talking about, like, I have a woman in charge of our tech, and I have a woman in charge of a lot of our financial processing. And so to be in a conversation and you're talking about I don't know, a recent show, or but you're also still dealing with very competent, important things. And I thought that was kind of an interesting way for people to not have some of those maybe microaggressions or ways in which people's ideas are challenged because you only had 3 people or 4 people in the room.
Yeah, for sure. And just kind of bouncing off of that thought, I know that something became really, really, I was definitely weirded by as a CEO, founder, boss of a company, when I brought on some of our female coders, I brought on other female team members. And when I said that, of course, know that you will always be paid at par at anybody else. This is not the kind of company where you'll be underpaid because of your gender. They were so grateful and so happy. It's like, oh my gosh, what is the world setting the expectation? That is incredible that we're doing that. And I think just being conscious about even writing job postings that attract women, because there's so many studies that show if I give like a 10-point list that meet all of it, and if women meet only, let's say, 50 or 60% of the list, they will not apply. But if men meet even 30-40% of the list, they'll apply. So just shortening the list to make it a little bit more women friendly is just things to just make everybody come together, and understanding that just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I understand all of the biases that all the women are going through that are similar to mine, different to mine, and just trying to be a little bit more cognizant.
Yeah, and I just to add to what you all are saying, like one of the things, it goes back to that women, have to work twice as hard, and sometimes they don't believe they can do it. It's one of those things that we have a large, most of our team is actually comprised of women, and their capability is outstanding. And I think a lot of times women underestimate it. And but when you give them the opportunity and you give them the flexibility to be able to balance family and work and everything else, and you just say, I need this by this date, if you're doing it at 4 in the morning or 11 o'clock at night or 3 in the afternoon, it doesn't really matter as long as you're able to accomplish the end goals. That flexibility resonates with women and men. But it really does help the women, just because right now there's so many. I have 3 daughters. I have 2 of my 3 daughters are virtual, and there are challenges even for me running a company, but having the balance and the goals and the objectives out there, we can get it done. And I know our team has been able to get it done too. So it's about being able to create an environment where they know the end goal. You have to be very effective communicating on that, but then give them the flexibility to be able to accomplish it on their own time.
I don't know if this is unorthodox for a panelist to ask the other panelists a question, but something that has just crossed my mind. A few of the books I've read recently on leadership, all of them constantly highlight the attribute of humility as being fundamental to a great leader. And I often, when I read that, find myself conflicted on the issue, because it sounds well and good to be humble, but I think perhaps some of those books were not written through the filter of how that is interpreted when it comes from a male versus coming from a female. And so I'm just interested to hear if you have any, anecdotes on how humility in and of itself has been perceived. Does it make do you think our teams are seeing that quality as, yes, you're a great leader, or is it seen when it comes from a female as meek or as not confident, or as, and do we have even a natural enough tendency to being humble that we really should just forget that, shut that down? I don't know.
I actually do have a pretty direct anecdote, because I am a confident person. So I can be perceived as aggressive or ego. I could be perceived as egocentric, but I've worked on that. And sometimes my journey was that I started embodying masculine energy because I was so insecure about being perceived as a woman or feminine. And so I would up my aggression and my biting tone. Turns out I'm naturally already like that. So I didn't need to up it, So I really didn't need to exaggerate that. It's actually, the more I've leaned into my feminine energy of just receptivity and listening and hearing people, I think that's what humility is hearing people, receiving it, and then being able to parse it. So my story is that I had a team member who is a man, and he approached me and said, sometimes you tell me things, and I call it the Michelle shutdown moment. And you tell me things and you just don't leave it open for further conversation. And that I don't like that. And I was like, that's called a decision. And you would have never said that had I been a male CEO. I am open. We have conversations. We have discussions. Some things are not up for discussion. I'm your leader. I have to make decisions for this company. And so that was a good example of how I maintained humility, but was not weak. I also maintained my power. And I said to him, I need you. I mean, he's a Black man. So I was like, in the same way that I will forever have to dig through my own innate biases from being born and raised in a white supremacist society, you will, even if you are a young woke guy, you will always, the rest of your life, have to work on your own innate misogynistic tendencies, being born and raised in the patriarchy. And this is a moment that you will have to evaluate, because a Michelle shutdown moment should be called a decision. You would be calling a man decisive and powerful.
Yeah, that's a powerful anecdote for sure, Michelle. I mean, I would only add, Angela, to the humility part, is that, it is, I think, a strength to have humility, but sometimes it does keep you out of the conversation. And so knowing that you need to have allies around you. I've done a lot of work just, like I think a lot of people have, but ended up doing some coursework on diversity, equity, and inclusion just through some other work that I'm doing. And part of that work shows that you have to kind of invite people to have that conversation, whether you're the leader or not. And so within the society, men have to often step up and say, notice and be aware of their tendency to maybe speak over or to not, acknowledge a trait in a woman that's similar to a man and they see it totally different.
Yeah.
And to be able to say that. And then even as women leaders, I think for us, because we're having to constantly fight that, we also have to look to the women who we're either working with or that we're working around and who are working for us in a way that allows them to have that humility, which I think is wonderful, have that empathy, which is really wonderful, but bring out their voice so that it's a way to engage and a way to be a part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I want to piggyback one more time because it's such a constant practice for me, but humility to me it's about how we define it. But also humility is just creating space for others to be who they are and have the opinions that they have. But humility in my definition set isn't being quiet or weak or letting other people take your space. You can still be big and powerful and opinionated and heart-centered and emotional and sensitive, and also and carry yourself in all those ways with humility. So one thing that I do with my team, and it is interesting because we're navigating what I consider to be we're trying to be the company of the future, which is post-capitalistic in my worldview, while also all navigating the fact that we were born and raised in capitalism. And so there's a lot of unlearning we have to do, all of us. But like on my team, women can talk about their periods openly. Like, are you going through a tough PMS day? Like, is this, or were you crying earlier today? For the men, if they want to open up and be emotional, and everyone on the team can be human. Like we are, and that to me brings strength to the conversation. It brings strength to our each of our individual personas, because what we don't realize is by trying to strip away our humanity and present ourselves as anything other than what we are being weaker. We are weakening and diluting our spirits. That's why we end up feeling so tired from those kinds of situations. Strength doesn't exhaust you.
I want to jump in and say, Michelle, I do believe we have some spirit animal stuff going, because when I think of humility, I think of that same thing. I actually had the opportunity to hear Bozoma St. John speak here in Birmingham. I think it was last year. And one of the things she said, she's a big figure in a room. She's tall, her voice is deeper like mine, big hair, whatever. And she said, I had to reteach myself to stop adjusting for the room and let the room adjust to me. And I believe that you still can have humility, empathy, all of those feelings that we do have, those feminine traits that are very positive, but at the same time, not giving somebody the comfort and ability to say anything they want to me, or else I'm everything but humble, but to be able to stand up for your company and say, no, that was a decision, sweetie. Like, no, this is what we do and whatever. And so Ashley and I both have carried that in our head when she said it, because there was a time, like when I'll have my hair flat iron, my daughter has the braids, the dreadlocks. And so we purposely, like I would make up for her dreadlocks so people wouldn't think what I didn't want them to think, or they were going to think on their own. Like I would have my hair bone straight, like, look, see, my hair works like makes you more comfortable. And so it's just, I think it's a lot of stuff moving around, but these definitions, people need to be straight on what they are, because we always get them lopsided to something that they're not.
Yeah. One thing I would just like to add, I mean, I think as a woman, in business, entrepreneurs, just in general, I mean, it goes back to the confidence, and, we can have kindness, compassion, empathy. And I think those things we come and bring innately. The parts that I think we need to do more of embracing is the confidence. And it goes back to, you step into a room and, you don't apologize. You just kind of go in and you own it. You have a place, you've earned your spot. Every man out there is going to do the same thing. There's no reason that we should act or change that path. And I don't think it's masculine to go in with confidence. I mean, I think that's something that we need to embrace as women, that confidence is a female trait. Being able to go out and be able to, achieve the goals that we've all been able to do. I mean, we're all examples that we can do it. So, I think it's a careful balance, but I think it's important that we embrace that side.
Absolutely. We can't hear you. You're on mute, I think.
How about now?
Good.
Cool. Thank you. So I was just saying that I couldn't agree more, because I mean, that's exactly right. I mean, I think it's just about being a good person, like how you would want to be to anybody. For example, at Cove Tool, anytime we onboard a new team member, we just help them see, like, we just say there's like 2 simple things that we do at Cove Tool. One, we care about other people. So long as whatever we're doing doesn't hurt anybody or doesn't, make somebody else like go through some crap or just some bad stuff, great. And then 2, use science and data to drive your decisions. If you're telling me that whatever you're proposing comes from some good logical point of view, great. And then if it's not throwing anybody else under the bus, wonderful. Then it's at par. And that's how I do pretty much everything that I'm looking at as well. If what I'm saying doesn't throw somebody under the bus, it's just, doing my job, well, fine.
Yeah. Angela, I'm obsessed with this question. I'm so glad you brought it up, because I think everyone can benefit from this, and in the same way that Sandeep, it sounds like you incorporated this into the tenets of your business. So did we. Like I am a big presence. Not only am I a big presence, I'm also a big woman. And I was told to be small my whole life in different ways, as so many of us are. Take up as little space as you can, to your point, Carrie, about Bozoma. That's so bananas to me. And I was in a meditation early last year, and I got this message. These words came into my brain, and they were, be as big as you are. And that was like earth shattering for me. Earth-shattering, and it's pretty simple. And I started mulling it over and practicing repeating it to myself and thinking about what it meant. And I finally just started telling everybody organically, like, just be as big as you are. Just be as big as you are. What do I do about this? I was thinking of starting this business. Just be as big as you are. And so now it's our company slogan, because I realized that, like, what are we doing with podcasting if not projecting everybody's bigness into the world, ideally? And where would we be as a world, as women, for sure, as women founders particularly, if we just stopped being afraid of our own bigness, right? And it's confidence, but it's also just a full embracing of your authentic self, your authentic power. And along the lines of, Sarah, what you were saying about confidence being perceived stereotypically as a male trait, so is power. Like that power, that wrecking ball kind of power. It's actually for both and for all, right? So I love that question. Thank you, Angela. We're at 3:30. So I wanted to open it up if we have like a last question or any comments from everyone who's been in attendance. Special shout out to Khadijah, who has been so vocal and so supportive. I'm feeling that love energy from you so hard, Khadijah. Thank you for being vocal. Cynthia, thanks to all of you for inspiring women everywhere and showcasing a world of strong and successful women. Oh, thank you so much, Cynthia. That's so dope. Okay, so anything, do you guys want to close out with any comments before we go?
I didn't want to say, because I told you I wanted to say this. I am a breast cancer survivor, and I was diagnosed during this crazy journey after we had just raised that $200,000. And I say that to say, hey, I am great. I am good. Angela will be my friend. She'll keep making sure that I'm on the good side of health. But as busy and as crazy as this journey is, never put your health secondary, because if you do, there's a chance you won't be able to see your journey come to fruition or to be able to travel it. And so I'm big on, obviously, mammograms, and for men, that little cough thing you guys do from what I hear, whatever it is that you need to do. If you're an entrepreneur, there's plenty of places to go and get stuff done for free. Put your health first so that you can run the race of entrepreneurship.
Ooh, that was powerful.
That's a great way to end, for sure.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Honestly, thank you all, to all of our panelists, Dana, Carrie, Angela, Sarah, Sandeep. Thank you so much for sharing time today. I mean, the vibes were amazing and the advice was exceptional.
Thank you all so
Thank you
much.
for having me.
This was awesome.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
loved your all's points. Thank you.
Be as big as you are.
Yeah, I love that.
Bye,
Thank
y'all.
you, Michelle, for
Women rule the world.
Oh, yes. Thank you.